6 nannies, 6 resignations. The most expensive one held a doctorate in pediatric psychology, cost $4,000 a week, and lasted exactly 2 days before she quit crying herself. 8-month-old Hannah Beck had not stopped crying since the hour she was born, and her father, a man who could dismantle a hostile takeover before breakfast, was completely, helplessly out of his depth. Then a woman with no resume, no degree, and a coat that had seen better winters walked into the nursery, knelt down, and did the one thing none of the 6 had thought to try. She stopped talking and started listening to a baby who, it turned out, had been trying to tell someone something for 8 straight months. Before we get into it, where are you watching from tonight? Drop your city below. The Bake residence sat above the Han River like something built to be photographed rather than lived in. Glass on 3 sides, a nursery on the top floor with a crib that regulated its own temperature and played white noise calibrated, according to the brochure, to mimic a mother's heartbeat. None of it had worked. Hannah Beck had been crying in some form for 243 days, and her father had the sunken, hollow look of a man keeping a private count. Seo Jun stood in his study with a folder of 6 resignation letters fanned out on the desk in front of him, like a losing hand of cards. And across from him sat a woman who, on paper, had absolutely nothing to recommend her. No degree, he said, not looking up from the single page of her application. No certifications. Your last position was a laundromat. I folded towels and held 3 different babies whose mothers worked the counter, Naya said. One of them only slept if you hummed slightly off key. I got very good at slightly off key. Seo Jun finally looked up. He had expected at minimum someone who understood the gravity of the situation, the 6-figure salary he was prepared to offer, the fact that his own mother had stopped visiting because the crying gave her migraines. He had not expected someone who looked faintly amused by all of it. This isn't a joke, he said. I didn't say it was. Nia's voice stayed even. You've had 6 specialists in 8 months. How many of them actually held her for longer than it took to write a report? He didn't answer that because the honest answer embarrassed him. 15 minutes, Nia said. Let me try 15 minutes. If nothing changes, you never have to see me again. Patience, who had been standing by the door pretending to organize a stack of mail she'd already organized twice, made a small sound that might have been a laugh disguised as a cough. She had worked in this house 11 years, had watched 6 nannies walk in with binders and leave in tears, and had developed strong opinions she mostly kept to herself. Mostly. 15 minutes, Seojun said finally. That's all. The nursery, when Nia stepped into it, was warm enough to grow orchids in. A wall panel glowed a soft, expensive blue. Displaying a temperature reading, Nia didn't bother reading, because she could feel it on her own skin the second she crossed the threshold. A heavy, syrupy warmth, the kind that made your collar stick before you'd been in a room 5 minutes. Hannah was crying in her crib, face blotchy, one small fist working furiously against a blanket that had been tucked in at the corners with the kind of precision only staff terrified of being fired could manage. Naya didn't pick her up right away. She stood at the crib rail first, just watching, the way you'd watch anything you were actually trying to understand instead of just trying to fix. The feeling arrived the way it always did, clear and simple and entirely unglamorous. Nothing mystical about it, just a certainty settling into her chest like something she'd always known. Too hot, too tight, nobody's listening. She peeled back the blanket first. Underneath, Hana was dressed in a cashmere onesie so fine it looked more like a runway sample than an outfit for an 8-month-old. Buttoned all the way to the throat, sleeves long enough to cover her hands. Nia checked the crease at the back of her neck and found it damp, a faint pink rash blooming where the collar had been rubbing. "You poor thing," she murmured, unbuttoning the top 2 buttons, rolling the sleeves back from small clenched fists, lifting her out of the crib and settling her against a shoulder instead of a mattress. "Nobody thought to just take your sweater off, did they?" Hana hiccuped, stilled, hiccuped again, smaller this time. Nia carried her to the window, cracked it an inch, let a thin ribbon of actual outside air into a room that had clearly not felt any in months, and stood there rocking slowly, humming something low and slightly off-key, the exact tune not mattering nearly as much as the fact that it wasn't trying too hard. 4 minutes later, Hana Beck stopped crying. Not the exhausted, hiccuping quiet of a baby who'd simply run out of energy, an actual settled quiet, eyes drooping, one small hand coming to rest flat against Nia's collarbone, like she was checking that she planned to stay. Downstairs, Seojun had been standing outside the nursery door for the last 2 of those 4 minutes, arms crossed, telling himself he was simply supervising. When the crying stopped, the silence hit him harder than the crying ever had. An actual physical jolt, like missing a stair in the dark. He pushed the door open. Nia turned unhurried, Hana's small dark head tucked beneath her chin. "She was overheating," she said quietly before he could ask. "The onesie's beautiful, but its wool blend under a heated crib panel in a room already running warm, and the collar's rubbing a rash into her neck. She wasn't upset about anything complicated. She was just uncomfortable, and nobody had checked." Seojun stared at his daughter's face, slack and peaceful in a way he genuinely could not remember ever seeing it, and felt something crack open in his chest that he did not have a polished boardroom response for. If you're already invested in these two, let me know in the comments. And don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss where this one goes. 6 specialists, he said, quiet almost to himself. 6. Some things aren't complicated, Nia said. They just require someone to actually sit still long enough to notice. Patients appeared in the doorway behind him, took one look at the sleeping baby, and pressed a dramatic hand to her chest like she'd just watched a miracle performed live. "Well," she said, "I'll go tell the kitchen we're keeping this one. Patience. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking, sir." She was already halfway down the hall, voice trailing behind her. The doctor at one made the baby cry harder. This one made her stop in 4 minutes. I know which one I'm rooting for. Seojun looked at Nia for a long moment, some careful calculation running behind his eyes. The particular wariness of a man who had been disappointed enough times to distrust anything that looked easy. 1 month, he said finally. Trial basis. If anything changes, if she gets worse, if you can't handle the schedule, if my mother has an opinion, which she will. 1 month, Nia agreed. That's more than enough time to prove I'm not going anywhere. She didn't know, saying it, how much weight that sentence was going to end up carrying. Neither did he, for now it was just a tired man and a sleeping baby and a woman with no resume standing in a too-warm nursery that for the first time in 243 days was finally, blessedly quiet. That night, long after Hana had gone down for what would turn out to be her first full stretch of unbroken sleep in 8 months, Seojun stood outside the nursery door again. not supervising this time, just listening to the particular quality of silence that meant something had actually, finally, gone right. The next morning, Nia was awake before the house staff's shift even technically started, standing in the kitchen in yesterday's cardigan, trying to work out an espresso machine that appeared to require a computer science degree when Patience found her. "Oh, honey, no." Patience gently nudged her aside and pressed a single obvious button. "You don't wrestle it. You ask it nicely." "I've made coffee on a hot plate in a laundromat break room for 4 years," Nia said. "This thing has a Wi-Fi login." "Everything in this house has a Wi-Fi login," Patience said. "The toaster asked me to accept its terms and conditions last month. I said no. We're at a standoff." Upstairs, Hannah was awake in her crib, not crying, just lying there with the particular stillness of a baby taking inventory of her surroundings. When Nia leaned over the rail, Hannah's whole face did something it hadn't done in the 8 months prior. A small, uncertain stretch at the corners of her mouth, gone almost as soon as it arrived, like she wasn't sure yet if it was allowed. If Hannah had the words, that first almost smile might have translated to something like, "You came back. I wasn't sure that happened here." Nia scooped her up before it could fully retreat. "There she is," she said softly. "Good morning, troublemaker." Over the 2 weeks that followed, the changes stacked up quietly, the way real changes tend to. Nothing dramatic enough for a headline, just a slow accumulation of ordinary good days. Hannah slept through 2 nights, then 4, then most of them. Her cheeks filled out. She started reaching for things instead of flinching from them, grabbing at Nia's braids with a determined little fist, shrieking with what could only be described as delight the first time Patience made a spoon disappear behind her back and reappear from her own ear. Seojun noticed before he admitted to noticing. He started coming home earlier. Not early enough to call it early, but earlier, and would find some reason to pass by the nursery on his way to his study, a door he had spent 8 months actively avoiding. "You don't have to sneak past like that," Nia told him one evening, not looking up from the bottle she was warming. "You're allowed in your own daughter's room." "I'm not sneaking. You're doing the thing where you walk slower so it looks accidental." He didn't have a response to that, mostly because it was true, and instead came fully into the room for once, sitting stiffly on the edge of the small armchair, like it might report back on his behavior to someone. "She likes this song," Nia said, tipping her head toward the low hum of a lullaby playlist. "Hates the classical one your mother keeps sending links to. Screams like it's an insult." "That's Beethoven. It's supposed to build neural pathways." "She's 8 months old, not sitting an exam. Let the baby have her nonsense pop song." Seojun almost smiled. It was a small thing, barely a shift at the corner of his mouth, but Nia caught it and felt something warm settle low in her chest that she chose very deliberately not to examine too closely. "Where did you learn all this?" he asked. "The overheating, the song, all of it. It wasn't in your file." "There isn't much in my file," Nia said. "I grew up moving between foster placements. You learn to read a room fast when you're the extra kid nobody planned for. Babies are easy, honestly. They tell you everything. Adults are the ones who lie about how they're doing." Something crossed his face, there and gone, and for a moment Nia thought he might ask a follow-up question, might push further into the parts of her history she generally kept folded up, small and put away. He didn't. "Thank you," he said instead, quiet, looking at his daughter rather than at her. For whatever it is you're doing, I don't fully understand it. I don't think I need to. If this one's already got you hooked, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I've got a lot more of this story coming, and I don't want you missing a single part. By the end of the second week, the household had rearranged itself around Nia without anyone formally deciding it should. The chef learned she preferred her tea too strong to be polite about it. The driver started leaving 5 minutes earlier on nursery supply runs because she always remembered one more thing. Patients had taken to calling her the miracle in a tone that was only half joking, and Hannah had developed the habit of reaching both arms straight up the second Nia entered a room, an open, uncomplicated demand that never failed to undo something in Nia's chest. Seojun's mother called twice that week, and Nia noticed, without meaning to eavesdrop, that both calls ended with him saying some version of "not yet" in a tone that suggested the topic wasn't going away. "She wants to meet you," he admitted the second time, catching Nia's raised eyebrow across the nursery. "My mother. She has opinions about who's raising her granddaughter." "Everyone in this house has opinions about that," Nia said lightly. "I'm getting used to it. She'll have more than most. I've survived worse than one opinionated grandmother," Nia said, and meant it as a joke, though something in the set of his jaw told her he wasn't entirely joking back. That Thursday evening, Hannah fell asleep mid-bottle, milk-drunk and boneless in Nia's arms, and Seojun lingered in the doorway longer than strictly necessary, watching the two of them in the low lamplight with an expression Nia couldn't quite name and didn't trust herself to try. "You're good at this," he said finally. "Not just the practical parts, all of it." "I've had a lot of practice loving children that weren't technically mine to love," Nia said, easing Hannah down into the crib with the careful, practiced motion of someone who'd done this 1,000 times for 100 different babies who'd never once been hers to keep. "You get good at it, or you get good at leaving. I decided a long time ago I'd rather be good at the first one." Something about the way she said it landed heavier than she meant it to, and for a moment neither of them said anything, the room quiet except for the soft mechanical hush of the crib's white noise and Hannah's even breathing. "You won't have to leave this one," Seojun said low, almost before he'd decided to say it out loud. "Not if I have anything to do with it." Nia looked up at him, caught off guard by the weight in his voice, and felt that same warmth from before rise again, harder to ignore this time. "Careful, Mr. Beck," she said, softer than she meant to. A girl could get used to hearing that. "Good," he said, and didn't look away. The moment stretched a beat longer than either of them strictly meant to allow, broken only when Nia's phone buzzed once on the side table, a text from the front gate flashing briefly on the screen, a car requesting clearance, a name attached that made Seojun's expression shift instantly back into something guarded and formal. "Sarah," he said, reading it over Nia's shoulder, something complicated crossing his face. "She's early. She wasn't supposed to be here until tomorrow." "Someone you know?" "Childhood friend," he said, already straightening, already reassembling the composed businessman Nia had met 2 weeks ago, like a coat he kept by the door for exactly this purpose. "She's going to have opinions too." Downstairs, headlights swept across the driveway, and the quiet, ordinary warmth of the last 2 weeks braced itself, without either of them quite realizing it yet, for its first real test. Sarah Yoon arrived the way she did everything. Nia would come to learn, like a woman entering a room she already owned. She came through the front doors in a pale coat that had clearly never been rained on, trailed by a tall, composed woman carrying a leather portfolio thick enough to double as a doorstop. Seo Jun. She said his name warmly, both hands briefly on his arms, the easy familiarity of someone who'd known him since before either of them had assistants. I heard the good news traveled fast. A miracle nanny. I had to come see for myself. Sarah, you could have called first. And missed the surprise on your face? Never. Her eyes moved past him, landing on Nia with a smile that stayed exactly the right size, polite and unreadable. You must be her. I've heard so much. Nia, she offered, extending a hand. Of course. Sarah's handshake was brief. This is Dr. Reeves. She flew in from Geneva this morning. I thought, given how important Hannah's development is, it couldn't hurt to have a proper second opinion. No offense intended, obviously. None taken, Nia said, and meant it, mostly. Patience hovering in the hallway with a tray of tea she had clearly manufactured as an excuse to be present for this, caught Nia's eye over Sarah's shoulder and mouthed something that looked suspiciously like, "Here we go." Dr. Reeves set her portfolio down on the nursery table with the ceremony of someone unveiling a diagnosis. I'll need 45 minutes with the child, she said. A full sensory and developmental panel, stimulus response, tracking, grip strength, vocalization frequency. She just went down for her nap 20 minutes ago, Nia said carefully. Development doesn't wait for naps. Dr. Reeves was already unpacking a set of brightly colored cards from her bag, flashcards, a small tablet, a set of chimes. Modern infant stimulation protocols recommend a minimum of 6 structured input sessions daily. I'm not seeing anything of the sort logged here. If Hannah had the words, waking up to a stranger holding colored cards 11 centimeters from her face, might have translated to something like, I was asleep. I was doing so well at being asleep. Please, someone, negotiate on my behalf. She started to fuss before Dr. Reeves had gotten through the second flashcard. She's overstimulated, Nia said, stepping in without quite meaning to raise her voice, though it came out firmer than she intended. She's been sleeping better because her days have quiet stretches built into them, not more input. 6 structured sessions a day would undo 6 weeks of progress in about 6 hours. Dr. Reeves did not look up from her tablet. With respect, that's not evidence-based. It's not evidence-based, Nia agreed. It's just true. Watch her hands. She's already starting to clench. Sarah, watching all of this from the doorway with her arms folded, wore the particular expression of a woman who had walked in hoping for one outcome and was watching it slip sideways in real time. Seo Jun, surely a proper panel wouldn't hurt, just to be thorough. Seo Jun hadn't said anything yet, standing near the crib with his jaw tight, watching his daughter's small fist curl tighter with every flashcard that came out. Put the cards away, he said finally, quiet, final. Nia's right. She's tired. Julian, Sarah caught herself. Seo Jun, you're basing a medical decision on instinct over an actual credentialed. I'm basing it on the fact that my daughter slept through the night for the first time in 8 months 2 weeks ago, and I'm not interested in undoing that to prove a point. He softened slightly, turning to Sarah directly. I know you mean well, I do, but this isn't the way. Dr. Reeves, with the practiced grace of someone who had clearly been dismissed before, packed her cards away without comment and excused herself to wait in the car. Sarah lingered a moment longer, and for just a second, something slipped through the polish. Not anger, something closer to hurt, quickly smoothed back over before it could fully show. I only came because I care about her too, she said, quieter now, less performance in it. About both of you. I don't know how to say that without it sounding like something else. I know, Sojun said, and something in his voice suggested this wasn't the first version of this conversation they'd had, just the first one Nia had witnessed. After Sarah's car pulled away, the house exhaled, the way houses do after tension leaves them, and Patience appeared in the nursery doorway with the tea nobody had touched. Well, she said, setting the tray down with a decisive clink, that was a whole production. I give it a 6 out of 10. Not enough shouting for a proper telenovela, but the flashcards were a nice touch of drama. Patience. I'm just saying, sir, some of us have been waiting 11 years for something interesting to happen in this house that wasn't a stock market emergency. Despite himself, Seo-jun's mouth twitched towards something almost like a laugh, the first real one Nia had heard out of him. Later that evening, once Hana was finally properly asleep, Nia found him on the terrace, tie loosened, staring out at the river without really seeing it. You didn't have to defend me like that, she said, coming to stand beside him. You could have let the expert have her 45 minutes, kept the peace. I didn't do it for you, he said, then catching himself shook his head. That's not true either. I did do it for you, mostly for Hana, but not only for Hana. Nia looked over at him, caught off guard by the plainness of it. Careful, Mr. Beck. That's twice now. I'm aware, he said, and this time when their eyes met, neither of them looked away first. If you're rooting for these two as hard as I am, let me know in the comments and hit that subscribe button. Sarah isn't done yet, and neither is this story. The next morning, Nia woke before her alarm, lay still for a moment staring at the ceiling, and made herself admit quietly to the empty room that something had shifted the night before that she wasn't entirely sure how to walk back from. She found Seo-jun already in the kitchen when she came down, which was new. He usually left before the household properly woke, off to some meeting that started before sunrise. He was standing at the counter in a plain shirt instead of a suit, holding a mug of coffee he didn't appear to be drinking. And when he saw her, something crossed his face that looked almost like nerves, which on him looked entirely unnatural, like watching a mountain try to shuffle its feet. Good morning, he said. Morning. Nia busied herself with the kettle, mostly to have something to do with her hands. You're still here. I moved my first meeting. Did you? I did. He set the mug down finally, and there was a pause that stretched a beat too long to be comfortable and not quite long enough to be awkward. About last night, you don't have to explain anything, Nia said quickly. It was a strange day. Sarah, the doctor, the flashcards. People say things on strange days. I meant it, he said plainly, cutting straight through the exit she'd tried to hand him. That's the part I need you to know. I wasn't caught up in the strangeness of the day. I've been aware of you for longer than one strange day, Nia. The kettle clicked off behind her, and for a moment neither of them moved to deal with it. Okay, Nia said softly, because it was the only honest thing she had. Okay. It wasn't a declaration. It also wasn't a no, and something in Seo-jun's shoulders eased at that, like a man who'd been braced for weather that hadn't come. Upstairs, Hana greeted the morning the way she'd started greeting most mornings lately, both arms straight up the second Nia appeared in the doorway. An open, uncomplicated demand that never failed to make something in Nia's chest go soft and unguarded. If Hannah had the words for it, that gesture might have translated to something like, "There you are. I checked. You're still here. Good." The days that followed settled into something neither of them named out loud, but both seemed to be quietly building toward. Small things. Seo Jun started eating breakfast at the kitchen table instead of in his study. Patience started leaving 2 coffees out instead of one without being asked. And once, catching Nia's eye across the kitchen, simply raised an eyebrow so slowly and deliberately that Nia had to leave the room to keep from laughing. "I'm not saying anything," Patience said to her back. "I'm just observing, silently, from over here. You're the least silent person I've ever met. And yet look how quiet I'm being about this." Hannah, for her part, had started babbling in long, serious strings of nonsense syllables directed mostly at Nia, punctuated by dramatic pauses like she expected a response to whatever she just said. Nia had taken to responding in full, earnest sentences, as if Hannah had said something genuinely important, which, depending on the day, occasionally felt true. The call came on a Thursday, mid-afternoon, and Nia knew from the way Seo Jun's whole posture changed answering it that whoever was on the other end mattered. "Yes, Mother," he said, and something in his voice went instantly more formal, more careful, a version of him Nia hadn't met yet. "No, I haven't forgotten. Saturday, yes." A pause. "You don't need to come early. I can send the car." Another pause, longer. "Of course. I'll let the house know." He hung up and stood there a moment before turning to Nia with a specific look of a man delivering news he already knew wouldn't land easily. "My mother's coming Saturday," he said. "2 days early. She wants to see Hannah, and I imagine you. Should I be worried?" "She's not Sarah," Seo Jun said carefully. "She won't perform for an audience. If she has concerns, she'll simply tell you exactly what they are, to your face without any softening around the edges. It's more honest. It's also somehow worse." Patience, overhearing from the hallway, poked her head in with the particular delight of someone who'd been waiting years for a specific event to finally happen. "Madam Oak, he is coming? Oh, we're cleaning everything. Everything, Nia." That woman notices dust from across a room. If you've made it this far into the story, drop a comment telling me what you think Grandmother Beck is going to be like. I have a feeling you're not going to see this one coming. Saturday arrived gray and quiet, the household moving with the particular hush of people bracing for an inspection. OK Heatback arrived exactly on time, not a minute early despite the earlier threat of it, dressed simply but precisely, and moved through the front hall the way a woman moves through a space she has never once needed to ask permission to occupy. She went straight to Hannah first, ignoring everyone else in the room entirely, and knelt with some difficulty to look at her properly. "You've put on weight," she said to the baby, not to anyone else. "Good. You were too thin last time." She looked up finally, taking in Nia with a long, unhurried, assessing gaze that made Nia understand immediately what Seo Jun had meant. "You're the one. I'm Nia. I know who you are. I asked Seo Jun 3 questions about you on the phone, and he answered all 3 like a man defending something. That told me plenty before I even arrived." She rose slowly, waving off her son's hand when he moved to help her. "Walk with me, not you," she added to Seo Jun without looking at him. "Her." Seo Jun opened his mouth to protest and then, visibly, decided against it. Oki led Naya out to the garden terrace, moving at a pace that suggested she had nowhere urgent to be and every intention of using that fact. "My son has had 6 nannies before you," she said without preamble. "I met exactly none of them. I didn't consider it worth my time. And yet here I am, 2 days early, walking in a garden with the 7th. I could ask why that changed. You could. I'll tell you anyway." Okihi stopped by the railing, looking out over the water rather than at Nia. "My granddaughter has slept through the night more times in the last month than in the 8 before it combined. My son moved his morning meeting for the first time in 4 years. He hasn't done that even for me. Something in this house is different, and I make it my business to understand what's different before I decide whether I approve of it." "And have you decided?" "Not yet." Oki finally turned to look at her directly, sharp and unhurried. "I had someone look into your background before I came. A formality. I do it for everyone who gets close to this family, whether they like it or not." Naya felt something in her chest go very still. "That seems thorough." "It is thorough, that's rather the point." Oki held her gaze, something unreadable moving behind her eyes. "Your employment records are clean. Your references, what few there are, speak well of you. But your official documentation, birth registration, school records, anything at all, only begins at age 7. Before that, according to every system my people checked, you simply don't exist." The garden had gone very quiet, the only sound the faint movement of water below the terrace, and Nia realized she'd stopped breathing somewhere in the middle of that sentence. "I don't know what that means," Nia said carefully, "any more than you do." "Perhaps not," Oki said, watching her with an expression that had shifted, just slightly, from scrutiny into something closer to genuine curiosity. "But I intend to find out, and I suspect, Miss Nia, that whatever answer is waiting for you at the bottom of that particular question is going to matter to this family a great deal more than either of us currently understands." Nia stood at the terrace railing long after Oki had gone back inside to sit with Hana, staring down at water that offered no particular answers, turning the words over until they'd worn smooth from repetition. "Before that, according to every system my people checked, you simply don't exist." She'd heard some version of that sentence her whole life, usually delivered by tired caseworkers with too many files and not enough time, and had trained herself long ago not to feel much of anything when it came around again. It surprised her how much this particular version of it landed differently. "You've been standing there 20 minutes. Seo Jun's voice, quiet from the terrace doorway. He came to stand beside her, not touching her, just close enough that she could feel the warmth of him against the evening chill. "She's going to have someone dig through my whole life," Nia said, not looking at him. "Every part of it, I don't even have access to myself." "You don't have to let her." "I know, I'm letting her anyway." Naya finally turned to face him. "I've spent my whole life not knowing. I told myself it stopped mattering somewhere around 16. But your mother says one sentence in a garden and suddenly it's the only thing I can think about." Seojun was quiet for a moment, weighing something. "Can I tell you something I don't tell people?" "Always." "Hana's mother didn't disappear," he said low. "Everyone assumes that, and I've let them, because it's simpler than the truth. She left a letter, very short. She said she wasn't built for this life, this house, any of it, and that Hana deserved someone who was. She wasn't cruel about it. She was honest, which somehow made it worse." He looked out at the water instead of at Nia, I spent 8 months telling myself it didn't matter why, just that it happened. It's easier to be angry at nothing than to sit with the actual reason. That's not nothing, Nia said softly. That's a woman telling you the truth about herself, even if it cost her everything to say it. I know that now. I don't think I knew it then. He looked at her, something open and unguarded in his face that she was starting to recognize as rare, something he didn't hand out easily. I'm not telling you this so you'll feel better about your own not knowing. I'm telling you because I think we're both carrying some version of the same weight, and I didn't want you carrying yours alone tonight. Nia felt something in her chest give, quiet and total, the particular ache of being understood by someone who wasn't performing understanding, who'd actually done the work of it. Thank you, she said, for that. He reached over slow enough that she had every chance to step back and took her hand. She didn't step back. If Hannah had the words for the small sound she made from her crib upstairs at that exact moment, half asleep, reaching one hand toward the empty air beside her, it might have translated to something like, I know you're both down there. Hurry up. The following week passed with the particular tension of a household waiting on news nobody had actually promised would arrive quickly. OK's investigator, a quiet, unhurried man named Mr. Choi, who dressed like an accountant and moved like he'd never once been in a hurry in his life, came and went twice, always with the same polite, unreadable expression, always leaving without saying much of anything to anyone but OKE directly. Patience, who considered herself the unofficial intelligence division of the household, had strong opinions about this arrangement. A whole investigator, she said, watching Mr. Choi's car pull away from the kitchen window for the second time. In my day, if you wanted to know something about somebody, you asked their neighbor and a nosy auntie. Now everybody needs a man in a gray suit with a folder. Efficiency, Nia said. Gossip, Patience corrected, just with better funding. Hannah, meanwhile, had discovered the joy of pulling herself upright against the coffee table, wobbling there triumphantly for exactly as long as her legs allowed before folding back onto the rug in a heap of delighted shrieking, utterly unbothered by the low hum of tension moving through the rest of the house around her. Sarah called twice that week. Nia knew because Seo Jun's jaw did a particular thing each time, a tightness that hadn't fully released by the time he set the phone down. She showed up in person on Friday, without Dr. Reeves this time, without the portfolio, dressed down in a way that made her look younger, more like the girl she must have been before all the polish set in. I owe you an apology, she said to Nia, catching her alone in the kitchen while Seojun took a call upstairs. The flashcards, the doctor, it wasn't really about Hannah's development, and I think you already knew that. I did, Nia said, not unkindly, but thank you for saying it anyway. I've known Seojun since we were 7, Sarah said, staring at her own hands wrapped around a coffee mug she wasn't drinking. I used to think eventually, in some quiet way, it would just become obvious to everyone, including him, that we made sense together. Old families, old expectations. I think I was the only one who ever actually believed it. She let out a short, humorless laugh. It's very embarrassing realizing that at 31. You're not embarrassing, Nia said. You're just further along in figuring out something I think everyone eventually has to figure out. How gracious of you. But there was no real bite in it, just tired honesty. Sarah finally looked up. For what it's worth, she's better with you, Hannah. I noticed it before I wanted to admit it. That should probably count for something. It counts for a lot, Nia said. Sarah nodded, set the mug down, gathered herself back into the composed woman who'd walked in the front door 2 weeks earlier, and left without any further drama. No legal letters, no closing threats, just a quiet, adult sort of retreat that Nia found she respected far more than she'd expected to. If you've been rooting for Sarah to get some redemption in this story, let me know in the comments. I want to hear if that landed the way I hoped it would. It was a Tuesday evening, 3 weeks into the investigation, when Mr. Choi arrived at the house without calling ahead, which he had never once done before, and asked with uncharacteristic urgency in his usually flat voice whether Mrs. Baek was available immediately. Okay, he received him in the study. Nia, passing in the hallway with Hana on her hip, caught only fragments through the half-open door. Mr. Choi's low, careful voice, the particular sound of a folder being opened, and then, unmistakably, Okehi's sharp intake of breath, the first sound of genuine surprise Nia had heard out of that woman since they'd met. "Get Seo-jun," Okehi said, her voice traveling clearly now, no longer controlled. "And get her too. She needs to see this herself." Nia stood frozen in the hallway, Hana's small warm weight against her chest, the only steady thing in the room, and realized with a slow, cold certainty that whatever was inside that folder was about to change something that couldn't be unchanged. Nia reached the study doorway with Hana still balanced on her hip, and found Seo-jun already there, standing behind his mother's chair, his face gone carefully blank in the specific way she now recognized as him, bracing for something. Mr. Choi's folder sat open on the desk. Okehi hadn't touched it again since Nia walked in. She was simply staring at it, one hand pressed flat against the wood, like she needed the desk to stay solid beneath her. "Sit down," Okehi said, without looking up. Nia sat, adjusting Hana against her shoulder more out of habit than necessity, the baby's small weight the only steady thing in a room that had gone strange and airless. Mr. Choi cleared his throat. When Miss Bangkol entered the foster system at age 7, she was brought in by a shelter intake worker with almost no documentation. One item was logged and kept in the file, a photograph torn in half. He slid it across the desk, careful, like it might bruise. The other half was never recovered. Nia looked down. A young woman, dark-haired, unmistakably Korean, maybe mid-20s in the photograph, was caught mid-laugh. One arm curled protectively around a space where the tear cut the image off. A small hand just visible at the edge of the frame, too small to belong to anyone but a baby. Pinned to the back of the photograph, tucked behind a strip of yellow tape, was a small enamel brooch, faded but intact. A crane, wings spread, standing in a ring of pine branches. Okehi made a sound Nia hadn't heard from her before. Small and involuntary. The sound of someone catching themselves on the edge of a memory they'd spent a long time trying not to fall into. "Mother," Seo-jun said carefully. "Do you know her?" Okehi didn't answer right away. She reached out and touched the brooch with one finger, light like it might still be warm. "I need a moment," she said finally, her voice thinner than Nia had ever heard it. "Just a moment. Take Hana upstairs, both of you, please." "Mother," Seo-jun. Just his name, but it carried enough weight that he stopped. Nia rose, softly at the sudden movement and let herself be steered out of the study by Seo Jun's hand at the small of her back, the door closing gently behind them on Ok-hee, still seated, still staring at a torn photograph like it had reached across 30 years to take something out of her. If Hana had the words for the strange, heavy quiet that followed them up the stairs, they might have translated to something like, "Everyone's being very serious. I don't like it. Someone should hold me until it's less serious." Nia obliged without needing to be asked twice. They didn't talk about it that night. Not directly. Seo Jun sat with her in the nursery long after Hana had gone down, neither of them saying much, his hand finding hers somewhere in the quiet and staying there. Some things Nia was learning didn't need narrating. They just needed someone willing to sit in them with you. 3 days passed with no further word from the study. Ok-hee kept to her rooms more than usual, polite but distant at meals. The particular controlled stillness of a woman working very hard to keep a door shut on something. Mr. Choi came and went twice more, always let straight in to see her privately, always leaving without a glance toward anyone else in the house. Patience, who considered silence in this household a personal affront, took to muttering theories while she worked. A secret sister, mark my words. She was folding laundry with more force than the task required. Or a runaway heiress situation. I've seen this exact plot on television. It always ends with somebody crying in the rain. You don't know that, Nia said, though her stomach had been doing something complicated for 3 days straight. I don't know it, Patience agreed. I feel it. There's a difference. On the fourth evening, Ok-hee finally summoned them both back to the study. She looked older than she had 4 days earlier, or perhaps simply more tired of carrying whatever it was she'd been carrying alone. Her name was Soo-ah, she said without preamble, once the door was shut. She was the closest thing I had to a sister. We grew up 2 houses apart. When my husband's family opposed our marriage, she was the only one who stood beside me for it. Ok-hee's hand found the brooch again, resting now on top of the closed folder. I gave her that pin myself, the year she left. Left where? Seo Jun asked, quiet, careful. I don't know, Ok-hee said, and something raw moved beneath the words. She disappeared 31 years ago. No warning, no goodbye. Her family said she'd run off with a man they considered beneath her, someone from abroad, and refused to speak of her again. I searched for years. Then I stopped, because searching had started to feel like grief wearing a disguise, and I didn't have the strength to keep dressing it up. Nia felt something cold settle low in her chest. You think I'm connected to her? I think, Ok-hee said, choosing each word like it cost her something, that the woman in that photograph is wearing a pin I have not seen anywhere on earth in 31 years, and that whoever is holding a baby in the missing half of that photograph is old enough now to be sitting in this room. The silence that followed had real weight to it, the specific silence of 3 people staring at a possibility none of them were ready to say out loud. It was Patience who broke it, bursting through the study door without knocking, breathless in a way that immediately told Nia this wasn't about the laundry. I'm sorry. I know you said no interruptions, Patience said, but there's a woman at the front gate, older, says she's been driving for 2 days, won't give a name to security, just keeps saying she's looking for a girl she was forced to give away a long time ago, and she has a photograph she wants to show whoever's in charge of this house. Ok-hee went very still. Nia felt Hana's small weight against her shoulder. felt Seo-jun's hand find hers without either of them deciding to reach for the other, and understood, with a slow, tightening certainty, that whoever was standing at that gate right now was about to answer a question she'd spent her entire life not letting herself ask. "Let her in," Ok said. Patience was already at the front door by the time the rest of them made it downstairs, one hand on the handle, looking back over her shoulder with none of her usual jokes ready for once. "She's been standing at that gate for 10 minutes without asking to be let in any further," Patience said quietly. "Just kept saying she wanted to wait to be invited properly. Something about not wanting to force her way into a house that isn't hers." Ok reached the door first, moving faster than her age usually allowed, and pulled it open herself. The woman on the front steps looked to be somewhere in her 70s, silver threading heavily through hair pulled back in a simple wrap, a long journey's worth of tiredness sitting in her shoulders. She wore a plain travel coat over a wrapper the color of dried hibiscus, and she held, pressed flat against her chest with both hands, a small leather folio gone soft and worn at the corners from what looked like decades of careful handling. "Good evening," she said, her voice steady despite everything else about her looking 2 days past exhausted. "My name is Folasad Bankole. I know how this looks, showing up unannounced at a house like this. I would not have come if it weren't important." Naya felt the surname land in her chest before her mind had finished catching up to why. "Bankole," she repeated quiet. Folasad's eyes moved past Ok, past Seo-jun, and settled on Nia with a focus so sudden and complete it felt almost physical, the leather folio pressing harder against her chest like she needed it to keep breathing. "What's your name, child?" "Nia." "Nia what?" "Nia Bankole." Folasad made a sound that wasn't quite a word, one hand coming up to cover her mouth, and for a moment nobody in the doorway moved at all. "Forgive me," Folasadi said, once she'd found her voice again, though it came out thinner than before. "I have been driving for 2 days. I did not let myself believe the whole way here that I would actually find anything. It is easier to hope quietly than to hope out loud." "I think you'd better come in," Ok said, stepping back from the door. They settled in the front sitting room. Hana handed off to Patience, who took her without a word, understanding for once that this wasn't the moment for commentary. Folasad sat on the edge of the sofa like she hadn't fully decided she was allowed to lean back into it, the leather folio still held against her chest. "My brother's name was Tunde," she began, once the tea Patience had brought sat untouched in front of her. "He went to Korea almost 32 years ago for engineering work, only meant to stay 18 months. He fell in love there, a Korean woman. He wrote to me about her constantly, how kind she was, how her family did not know yet, how frightened he was to tell them because he already understood what they would say about a man like him." Oki had gone very still in her chair, one hand pressed flat against her chest. "Her family found out before he could tell them properly," Folasad continued. "There was a great deal of anger, threats from what he told me, the kind that made him believe staying would only bring her more harm than good. He came home, alone. He never told me the whole of it, not for years, not until he was dying, and there wasn't any reason left to keep it from me." Her hands tightened around the folio. "There was a baby, a daughter, taken from her mother before he even knew she'd been born, sent somewhere he was never given the details of. He spent the rest of his life searching, quietly, without much money and without much hope, and made me promise at the very end that I would keep looking after he no longer could. If you're feeling this one already, let me know in the comments, because it's about to get a lot bigger than any of us expected. Someone reached out to an old contact of mine 3 days ago, Folasad said, asking questions that only our family would know the answers to. A private investigator, very careful, very polite. I did not wait for him to call me back. I got in my car instead. Aki's breath caught audibly. Mr. Choi. I don't know his name, Folasad said. I only know that whoever he was searching for, it was clearly the same person I have been searching for since I buried my brother 6 years ago. She finally opened the folio resting against her chest, hands trembling slightly, and drew out a single photograph, edges soft with age, torn cleanly down one side. Nia's whole body had gone cold before she'd even fully processed what she was looking at. He kept this, Folasad said. The only piece of her he had left. A photograph, torn in two, the day the family took the baby away. He said he never knew why it was torn, only that it was already like this when it reached him. Half a photograph and a note that said nothing more than, "Forgive me." Oki rose from her chair without a word, crossed to the small writing desk in the corner where Mr. Choi's original folder still sat, and drew out the other half, the one with the young woman caught mid-laugh. One arm curled around a space the tear had cut clean through. She carried it back and knelt, with some difficulty, in front of the low table, and laid both halves down side by side. The tear matched. Not close, not similar. Exact down to the ragged edge of the paper, down to the faint crease where someone, 31 years ago, had folded it once before tearing it the rest of the way. On Folasad's half hidden by the same small hand that reached across from the other side, was the unmistakable curve of an infant's face, dark-eyed, solemn, watching whoever held the camera with the particular seriousness only very young babies manage. Nia stared at her own face, 31 years younger, staring back at her from a photograph that had been torn in half and split across 2 continents for 3 decades. Nobody in the room said anything at all. Then Oki looked up, first at Nia, then at Folasad, her voice barely above a whisper. "There's something you need to know before this goes any further," she said. "Su-ah didn't die searching for her daughter the way you believe your brother did." Folasad went very still. "What do you mean?" Aki's hand was shaking now, still resting on the torn edge of the photograph. "I mean," she said, "that 3 weeks ago, before any of this began, I received a letter I haven't shown anyone in this room. It wasn't signed with a name I recognized at first, but I recognize the handwriting now. I've known it since we were girls." Okay's hands were unsteady as she crossed to the writing desk a second time, drawing out a plain envelope tucked beneath a stack of correspondence she clearly hadn't let anyone else near. The paper inside was thin, the handwriting careful and slightly cramped, the writing of someone unused to putting difficult things into words. "She doesn't sign it with her full name," Okey said, unfolding it slowly. "Just an initial. I almost didn't recognize it. Almost." She read it aloud, voice catching more than once. Su-ah wrote that she'd seen an old friend's name attached to a magazine piece about a family foundation, recognized it instantly despite 31 years, and sat with the article for 6 days before allowing herself to write anything at all. She said she'd built a quiet life in a small coastal town, that she mended nets for a fishing cooperative most mornings, that she had never married again and never fully explained to anyone why. She said she wasn't writing to ask for anything, only to know if her old friend was well, if her old friend had ever forgiven her for disappearing the way she had, and whether— This was the line that made Oki's voice give out entirely for a moment. Whether her old friend still thought sometimes about the daughter neither of them had ever been allowed to properly grieve. The room went completely silent. Nia realized distantly that she'd stopped breathing again, a habit she seemed to be developing rapidly this week. "She doesn't know," Nia said finally, quiet, disbelieving. "She's writing about a daughter she thinks is just gone. She has no idea anyone's still looking." "No," Oki said. "She doesn't know anything. She's been carrying this alone for 31 years the same way you have. And neither of you had any way of knowing you were carrying the same grief on opposite ends of it." Folasad had pressed a hand to her mouth, tears finally slipping free after 2 days of holding them at bay through sheer determination. "My brother searched until the day he died," she said softly. "If only he could have known she was searching too." Nia stood abruptly, needing air more than she needed to explain why, and made it as far as the terrace door before Seojun caught up with her, not saying anything at first, just standing close enough that she could lean back into him if she needed to. She needed to. "I don't know how to hold this," she admitted, staring out at the dark water. "I spent my whole life deciding it didn't matter, not knowing. And now I find out she's been alive this whole time, 30 minutes from wherever I happened to be growing up, mending fishing nets and wondering if anyone still thinks about me." "You don't have to hold it perfectly," Sojun said. "You just have to hold it. I'll be right here while you do." If Hana had the words for the way she reached both arms up toward Nia the moment they came back inside, small and insistent, utterly unbothered by any of the enormity currently reshaping the room around her, they might have translated to something like, "Whatever's happening, hold me while you figure it out." That's usually how we solve things around here. Okay, once she'd composed herself, was the one who moved first the following morning, arriving at breakfast already dressed for travel, an address written in her own hand on a slip of paper she set down in the center of the table like a decision already made. "A letter could take a week to reach her," she said, "could sit unopened for days after that. I am 76 years old, and I have already lost 31 years I can't get back. I am not interested in losing a single week more than I have to." "You want to go there," Sojun said. "Today." "I want to go there today," Aki confirmed. "All of us. Nia most of all, if she's willing." Nia looked down at the address, a small dot on a coastline several hours south, a town she'd never once had reason to think about before yesterday, and felt something settle in her chest that was equal parts terror and a strange, fragile hope she hadn't let herself feel in longer than she could remember. "I'm willing," she said. Patience, packing a bag of snacks for the road with the seriousness of a general preparing for battle, paused just long enough to squeeze Nia's hand on her way past. "Whatever's waiting at the end of that road," she said, "you won't be walking up to it alone. Remember that." The drive took most of the day, the city thinning slowly into hills and then coastline, the car quiet in the particular way a car goes quiet when everyone inside it is holding the same breath for different reasons. Hana slept most of the way, oblivious, occasionally stirring to babble a string of serious nonsense at the window before drifting off again. They found the address as the light was turning gold and low over the water, a small house at the end of a narrow lane, nets drying on a line strung between two posts, a modest garden gone a little wild with sea salt and neglect. A woman was crouched among the nets, silver-streaked hair tied back simply, hands moving through her work with the practiced rhythm of someone who'd done it 10,000 times before. She didn't look up as the car came to a stop. She looked up when the car doors opened. She looked up, and her hands went still on the net in front of her, and for a long, suspended moment, she simply stared at the small group climbing out of the car, an old friend she hadn't seen in 31 years, and beside her, a young woman with a baby on her hip, whose face, even from this distance, was unmistakably, achingly familiar. The net slipped from her hands entirely, forgotten, pooling at her feet. "Okay, he?" Her voice carried thin and disbelieving across the yard. Then her eyes moved past her old friend, landed fully on Nia, and stayed there, something breaking open across her whole face all at once. She didn't ask a single question. She simply started walking, faster with every step, until she was running, and Nia found herself moving too, some part of her body deciding before her mind had caught up, until there was no distance left between them at all. Sua's arms closed around her before either of them had said a single word, and for a long moment neither of them tried to. She smelled like salt water and the particular mineral dampness of nets left out too long in sea air, and she was shaking, small tremors running through her whole body, one hand coming up to cradle the back of Nia's head, the way you'd hold something you were terrified might disappear if you loosened your grip even slightly. "Let me look at you," she said finally, pulling back just far enough to hold Nia's face between both hands, searching it with an intensity that felt almost like being read from the inside out. "Your father's eyes. I would know them anywhere. I used to see them every time I closed my own." "You knew him," Nia said, the words coming out unsteady. "Tunde. I loved him," Sua said simply, like it was the only true thing left to say after 31 years of silence. "I have loved him every single day since, whether or not I was permitted to." Behind them, Oki had gone very still, watching the two of them with an expression that seemed to be holding several decades of grief and relief at once. And when Sua finally looked past Nia and found her old friend's face, something in both women broke open at the same time. "You came," Sua whispered. "I should have come 30 years ago," Aki said, crossing the last few feet between them. And then the two women were holding each other too, two old friends finally closing a distance neither of them had chosen in the first place. Hana, perched on Nia's hip through all of it, had been watching the whole scene with the wide, solemn attention she reserved for anything genuinely important, and chose that exact moment to reach one small hand toward Sua's face, patting her cheek with the gentle, matter-of-fact curiosity only a baby can get away with. Sua went still, then laughed, a wet, startled sound. "And who is this?" "This is Hana," Nia said. "She's not mine, not by blood, but she might as well be." "Family rarely waits for blood to make itself official," Sua said, touching Hana's small hand with one finger, careful like she was relearning how to be gentle with something that small. "I would know. I built an entire life out of people who weren't required to stay and did anyway. If this reunion has you in your feelings the way it's got me, let me know in the comments. And tell me honestly, did you see this twist coming, or did it catch you completely off guard?" They moved inside eventually, into a small house that smelled of salt and old wood, tea made and mostly left to go cold in front of everyone. the kind of conversation that needed both hands free and no distractions. Folasad sat quietly through most of it, dabbing at her eyes, watching a woman she'd only known through her brother's grief finally become a real person instead of a name he used to say softly, late at night when he thought no one else could hear him. "Why didn't you look sooner?" Naya asked eventually, gently, needing to understand rather than needing to accuse. 31 years is a long time to not know. Sua's hands tightened around her teacup. "My family told me, after they took you, that you'd already been placed through proper channels, sent somewhere far away where you'd have opportunities I could never give you. They said searching would only unsettle a life that was already settled, that any contact from me would follow you like a shadow you didn't ask for and didn't deserve." Her voice thinned. "I believe them, because believing them hurt less than the alternative, which was accepting that they'd simply taken you and given me nothing but a story to make the losing bearable. I stopped looking because I convinced myself looking would only hurt you. I understand now that was its own kind of cowardice, dressed up as love." "It wasn't cowardice," Nia said quietly. "It was surviving something that shouldn't have happened to you in the first place." "Your father searched every year I didn't," Folasad said softly, unable to hold it back any longer. "Every single year, until the day he died." Sua's face changed slowly, the color draining from it in a way that made the whole room go still. "Died?" she repeated, barely a whisper. "Tundi is 6 years ago," Folasad said gently, reaching across the small table to take her hand. "He was still asking after you both, right up until the end. He never stopped believing he'd find her. I only wish more than anything that he could have been here to see this exact moment." The silence that followed had real weight to it, grief and joy occupying the same small room with nowhere else to go. And Sua pressed a hand to her mouth, tears finally spilling over freely, mourning a man she'd spent 31 years quietly loving, from a distance she'd never once chosen for herself, learning in the same breath that he'd never stopped looking, and that he was gone before either of them had gotten the chance to find out. They stayed at Sua's house long after the tea had gone properly cold, the kind of evening that refuses to be rushed once it's finally arrived. Sua cooked despite everyone's protests, moving around her small kitchen with a quiet, practiced economy, refusing help from anyone but Hana, who she kept propped on one hip while she stirred a pot of something that smelled like 30 years of a life nobody in that car had known anything about that morning. "She likes garlic," Sua observed, watching Hana's face scrunch with delighted suspicion at the smell. "Good instincts. Never trust a person who doesn't." If Hana had the words for her own opinion on the matter, they might have translated to something like, "Strange new lady smells like dinner and doesn't put me down. 10 out of 10. No notes." Okay, he and Sua sat together on the porch steps once the food was cleared, close in the particular way of two women picking a friendship back up exactly where it had been dropped 31 years earlier, like the years in between were simply a long pause rather than an ending. Nia watched them through the window, Folasad beside her, both quiet, both still absorbing a day too large to fully hold yet. "What happens now?" Nia asked, more to herself than to anyone. "Whatever you want to happen," Folasad said gently. "Nothing about today requires you to decide your whole future by tomorrow morning." Sua, when Nia finally asked her directly, was careful and unhurried about it. No dramatic promises, no instant relocation. "I have built built a small, quiet life here," she said. "I'm not in a hurry to abandon it, and I don't think you should be in a hurry to hand me 31 years of missed birthdays all at once, as if a single afternoon could account for that. But I would like to know you, slowly if that's all right. Sundays perhaps, phone calls. However this is supposed to work when nobody's ever taught either of us the proper way to do it." "Sundays," Nia repeated, something loosening in her chest at the modesty of it, the honesty. "I can do Sundays." They left as the light was fully gone, headlights carving a path back up the narrow coastal road. Okihi unusually quiet in the front seat, one hand resting on the folded letter in her lap, like she intended to reread it 100 more times before she was done with it. Hana slept the whole drive, worn out from a day too big for anyone, let alone someone not yet a year old. Back at the estate, the house welcomed them with patience, standing in the doorway before the car had even fully stopped, wringing her hands with the particular anxious energy of someone who had been left out of the single biggest thing to happen in this household in a decade. "Well," she demanded before anyone had gotten a foot through the door, "don't you dare make me wait until morning. Tell me everything, and don't skip the emotional parts. Those are my favorite." Naya found herself laughing, actually laughing, for what felt like the first time in days, and let patience pull her into the kitchen to recount the whole of it, while Okihi retreated upstairs to sit with a letter she'd apparently been waiting 31 years to properly answer. It was well past midnight by the time the house had finally quieted, Hana long asleep, Patience finally satisfied, and gone to bed, still shaking her head in wonder. Nia found Seojun on the terrace, exactly where she'd found him the very first time something had shifted between them. Like the terrace itself had become the place they came to say the things too large for indoor rooms. "You've been quiet since we got back," she said, coming to stand beside him. "I've been thinking." He turned to face her fully, something serious and unguarded moving across his features. The particular expression of a man who had been rehearsing a sentence for longer than he wanted to admit. "Watching you today, watching you find her after a lifetime of not knowing, it made something very clear to me that I think I'd been avoiding admitting. Seojun, I don't want you to just be someone who works in this house," he said, quiet but steady, not looking away from her. "I haven't wanted that for a while now, if I'm honest with myself. I want to ask you something, and I need you to know I'm not asking it because today was emotional and strange, and everyone's guard is down. I've been carrying this question for longer than today." Nia's breath caught the terrace suddenly, feeling very small around the two of them, the night air gone still. "Ask me," she said softly. He opened his mouth to do exactly that, and the terrace doors behind them swung open before a single word made it out. Okihi standing there pale and urgent in her robe, the letter still crumpled in one fist. "Forgive the interruption," she said, breathless in a way Naya had never once heard from her. "But I called the number Su'a left. I needed to hear her voice again tonight. I couldn't wait until Sunday." Her eyes moved to Naya, something complicated and enormous behind them. "She told me something else. Something she said she wasn't ready to say in front of everyone earlier today. It's about your father's family, Nia, the ones who forced him to leave Korea in the first place. You need to hear this too, Seojun. Both of you, now." Okihi's hands were still trembling slightly as she held the phone out. Su'a's voice audible even from a few feet away, thin and urgent through the speaker. "Tell them," Oki said gently. "Tell them what you told me. There was a pause on the line, the particular pause of someone gathering courage they'd been rationing for decades. After Tunde left, Su'a said, her voice carrying clearly into the quiet study, he wrote to me. For almost 2 years, I never saw a single letter. My father intercepted all of them, kept them locked away rather than destroyed. I think because even he couldn't quite bring himself to burn another man's love letters, only hide them. I found the box 11 years ago, going through his things after he passed. I never opened it. I told myself it would hurt too much, reading a version of a man I'd already lost twice. It's been sitting in my closet for 11 years. Nia's chest had gone tight and full at once. You still have them. Every single one, Su'a said. Unopened. Waiting, I think, for exactly this. I'll bring them Sunday, if that's still all right. I think it's time somebody finally read them. The call ended gently a few minutes later. Promises exchanged, Sunday confirmed, and the study settled into a quiet that felt different from the tension of an hour earlier. Heavier in one sense, lighter in another. The particular weight of a story finally getting to finish the sentence it had been holding for 31 years. If Hannah had the words for the small sound she made from her spot on Patience's hip in the doorway, watching the room full of adults wiping their eyes for reasons far too complicated for her yet, they might have translated to something like, everyone's crying the happy kind tonight. I can tell the difference now. I'm getting good at this. Okay, he retreated to bed not long after, drained in the particular way joy and grief together tend to drain a person, and the house slowly exhaled around her absence. Nia found herself back on the terrace within the hour, drawn there less by decision than by habit, the night air cool and steady against a day that had held far too much. Seojun was already there when she arrived, exactly where she'd left him, like he'd simply been waiting for the world to give them their moment back. You never got to finish, Nia said softly, coming to stand beside him. No, he agreed, I didn't. He turned to face her fully, and whatever nerves had been sitting in his shoulders earlier seemed to have settled into something steadier, more certain, like the interruption had only given the words more time to become true. I don't have a ring on me. I want you to know that wasn't the plan tonight, standing here without one. But I've learned this week that waiting for the perfect moment is how people lose 31 years without meaning to, and I'm not interested in losing a single one more. Nia's breath caught, the whole terrace narrowing down to just the sound of his voice and the steady thud of her own heart. I don't want you to be someone who works in this house, he said again, softer this time. I want you to be someone this house belongs to. I want to fall asleep every night knowing you're not going anywhere, and wake up every morning still getting to prove I meant that. Marry me, Nia. Not because of today, not because of everything that happened with your mother or your father or any of it. Because of every ordinary Tuesday before today, when you were just quietly, completely becoming the best part of my life without either of us naming it out loud. Nia felt tears slip free before she'd even fully processed the question, a full, unguarded kind of crying she hadn't let herself do in years. Yes, she said, the word coming out thick and certain all at once. Yes, Seojun, of course, yes. He kissed her then, careful at first, and then not careful at all. 31 years and 8 months, and one long, impossible day, folding quietly into a single steady moment. Neither of them was in any hurry to end. From the doorway, unseen until the particular sound of a dramatically cleared throat gave her away, Patience stood with both hands pressed to her chest. Hannah balanced on one hip, watching watching the whole thing with tears streaming shamelessly down her face. "I knew it," she announced, entirely unashamed of having witnessed the whole proposal. "I have known it since week 2. I want that on record before either of you tries to tell this story without me in it properly." Hannah, catching the general mood of the room without understanding a single word of it, let out a delighted shriek and clapped both hands together. And for the first time in longer than any of them could quite measure, the whole house felt, all at once, completely and simply whole. If you're as happy about this as I am, tell me in the comments, and get ready because the wedding is coming, and I promise you it's going to be worth every single episode it took to get here. The wedding took place on a bright morning 6 weeks later, not in the grand ballroom the Beck family had used for 3 generations of formal occasions, but in Sua's garden by the coast. Salt air mixing with the smell of frangipani, someone had strung generously through a simple wooden arch. Nia had insisted on it the moment the idea occurred to her, and he, who might once have argued for tradition, had simply nodded and said some things deserved to happen, exactly where the truth had finally caught up with everyone. Sua stood at the edge of the small gathered crowd that morning, with a shoebox in her arms, worn soft at the corners. The letters inside finally read, finally answered in whatever quiet way a person answers a love, 31 years too late. She'd cried through most of them alone in her kitchen the week prior. She'd admitted to Nia over the phone and had woken up the next morning feeling, for the first time in 3 decades, like a door she hadn't realized was still open, had finally gently closed. Folasad had flown back for the occasion, seated in the second row beside Patience. The two of them already thick as old friends, despite having known each other only a matter of weeks, bonding fast and loud over exactly how long they'd each personally predicted this wedding was coming. 6 weeks, Patience was saying, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue she'd already gone through several of. "I called it in week 2. Week 2. My brother called it before he even met her," Folasad said, laughing through her own tears. "He used to say love finds its way home eventually, however long the road. He would have loved this. All of it." Nia walked down the short garden aisle on Sua's arm, an arrangement that had taken some quiet, careful conversation to settle on, given that Sua had missed 31 years of the right to walk her anywhere at all. But Sua had asked, simply and without pretense, if she might be given this one thing, this single ordinary privilege, and Nia hadn't been able to find a single reason to say no. Hannah, not quite walking steadily enough to be trusted with an actual flower girl's basket, rode instead on Oki's hip near the front, clutching a single loose bloom in one fist that she occasionally, solemnly, offered to anyone who made eye contact with her. Seojun waited at the end of the aisle in a simple linen suit, none of the tailored armor he'd worn the day they met, watching Nia walk toward him with an expression so openly unguarded that more than one guest would later admit it was the moment they themselves started crying. "You found your family," he said quietly, once she'd reached him, too low for anyone else to catch. "All of it, and somehow there was still room in it for me." "There was always room for you," Nia said. "I think some part of me knew that the very first afternoon, watching you stand outside a nursery door, too afraid to walk in and too stubborn to walk away." The ceremony itself was short, unpolished in exactly the way Nia had wanted it, vows spoken plainly instead of performed, and when the officiant finally pronounced them married, The small gathered crowd didn't so much applaud as simply exhale. 31 years and one long, impossible year, folding at last into something that felt, finally, complete. If Hana had the words for the moment Nia and Seojun turned to face everyone as a married couple, her small, triumphant shriek of delight in the flower she immediately hurled in their general direction might have translated to something like, "I helped. Don't forget I helped." 2 years later, on an unremarkable Tuesday evening that nobody thought to mark on any calendar, the whole extended family gathered around the same terrace where a proposal had once been interrupted by a phone call that changed everything. Hana, 3 years old now and considerably more opinionated about it, sat between her grandmothers, both of them, Ak-hee on one side and Su-ah, visiting for the week, on the other, narrating an elaborate story about a garden snail she'd found that morning with the kind of seriousness only a 3-year-old can properly muster. Patience moved between them, refilling tea nobody had asked her to refill, still narrating her own running commentary to anyone who'd listen, though these days it was mostly aimed at the newest member of the household, a baby boy barely 4 months old, currently asleep against Nia's shoulder. "Nannies before you," Seojun said quietly, settling beside his wife, watching his son's small fist curl instinctively around a fold of her shirt even in sleep. And somehow the 7th turned out to be the only one who ever actually mattered. "Turns out all he needed," Nia said, pressing a kiss to the top of their son's head, "was someone willing to stop talking long enough to listen." Across the garden, Folasad had arrived that morning for her regular visit. Already deep in an animated debate with Patience about whose fried rice recipe was objectively superior, the two of them bickering with the easy comfort of family rather than the politeness of guests. Su-ah watched them both. A soft, permanent kind of peace settled into her face these days that hadn't been there the afternoon a stranger's car first pulled into her yard. Hana finished her snail story to Oki's very serious, very attentive nodding, then abruptly abandoned the topic entirely to climb into Nia's lap instead, pressing her small hand flat against her baby brother's back, like she was personally responsible for making sure he kept breathing properly. If Hana had the words for it, that small proprietary gesture might have translated to something like, "This one's mine too. I'm keeping both of them." Nobody in that garden needed the translation anymore. They'd all long since learned to hear it without her having to say a single word.